Get off the bike right now, you filthy animal. The officer's voice exploded across the quiet street before Maya Williams could even turn off the engine. The next second, a hand slammed onto her shoulder and yanked her hard enough that her boot scraped sideways against the asphalt. What are you doing? Maya gasped, grabbing the handlebar to keep from falling. She had only taken the bike out to clear her head, trying to untangle the corruption case that had been sitting on her desk for weeks. Officer Daniel Briggs leaned over her with his jaw clenched and his eyes full of contempt. His gaze moved from her face to the sleek black sport bike beneath her, then back again, as if the two things could not possibly belong in the same picture. You really expect me to believe this is yours? He snapped. Maya's throat tightened. Officer, please. I can explain. I have the registration. My ID is in the compartment. Don't give me that. Briggs jerked her arm again. A woman like you doesn't buy a bike like this, unless she's stealing for a living. The words hit harder than his grip. Maya stared at him, stunned for one breath too long. Around them, the neighborhood had gone still. A sprinkler clicked across a green lawn. A pickup truck slowed near the corner. Somewhere behind a screen door, someone was watching. I did not steal this motorcycle, Maya said, her voice trembling despite everything she had trained herself to be. It's mine. Run the plates. Check the VIN. Call it in. Briggs let out a cold, ugly laugh. People like you always have an excuse, don't you? A piece of paper, a fake story, some title you think will scare me. What are you today? A lawyer? A doctor? Some rich woman who got lost? Maya forced herself to breathe slowly. She had faced hostile attorneys, corrupt officials, frightened witnesses, and men who lied under oath with smiles on their faces. But this was different. This was not a courtroom. There was no bench between them, no bailiff, no record. I am a federal judge, she said clearly. My name is Maya Williams. My credentials are in the side compartment of the bike. If you allow me to retrieve them slowly, I can identify myself. For a second, Briggs simply stared. Then he burst out laughing, not because it was funny, because he wanted her to feel small. A federal judge? He said, looking over his shoulder, as if inviting the whole street to enjoy the joke. You hear that? She's a federal judge now. Maya's hands lifted higher, palms open. Officer, I am telling you the truth. You are making a serious mistake. His smile disappeared. In one violent motion, Briggs grabbed a fistful of her hair near the back of her helmet line and yanked her head backward. Pain shot across her scalp, hot and blinding. Maya cried out, her body arching as he pulled her off balance. You listen to me, he hissed close to her ear. You don't stand here and pretend to be a federal judge. You do not stand here and lie to my face. You understand me? I'm not impersonating anyone, Maya said, her voice breaking. Please, my ID. He shoved her. Maya stumbled backward, her heel catching against the curb. She fell hard against the bike's right side, her lower leg striking the hot exhaust pipe. A flash of pain burned through her calf, immediate and searing. She sucked in a sharp breath and grabbed at the seat, trying not to collapse. The smell of heated leather and skin hit her all at once. She looked down, horrified, as pain spread beneath the fabric of her riding pants. Across the street, an older woman stepped onto her porch with a phone raised in both hands. Officer, the woman called. I'm recording this. Briggs turned his head just enough to see her, then looked back at Maya with a warning in his eyes. His voice lowered. Get your hands behind your back. Maya was shaking now. Not from guilt, not from fear alone. From disbelief, from pain, from the terrible clarity that came when a person finally understood that the rules had stopped applying. I need medical attention, she said through clenched teeth. My leg is burned. You'll get what you get at the station. I have done nothing wrong. Hands behind your back. She tried to straighten, but the burn made her gasp. Briggs seized her arm and twisted it behind her. The first cuff snapped around her wrist. Then the second. The metal bit deep. These are too tight, Maya said. You should have cooperated. I was cooperating. He leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You were pretending. That was when the tow truck turned onto the street. Maya saw it over his shoulder, rolling in slow and certain, as if it had been waiting nearby. The driver did not ask questions. He did not look surprised. He climbed out, glanced once at Briggs, and moved straight toward Maya's bike. "No," Maya said, panic breaking through her control. "You can't take that. There's no theft report. There's no probable cause." Briggs pushed her toward the cruiser. "Stolen property gets impounded." "It is not stolen." The tow hook clanked against the frame. That sound changed something inside her. Until that moment, Maya had still believed she could fix this with the right words, the right title, or the right proof. But the tow truck was already there, and the driver moved like he had done this many times before. Briggs was not trying to find the truth. He was following a plan. Her trained mind started connecting the pieces even through the pain. The corruption case on her desk, the missing records, the unexplained seizures, the strange towing contracts, and the money that kept disappearing before she could trace it. Briggs shoved her into the back seat of the cruiser. Her burned leg throbbed. Her wrists ached. Her scalp still stung where he had grabbed her. Through the window, she watched her motorcycle rise onto the tow bed, stolen from her in broad daylight by men wearing badges. The cruiser door slammed shut. For a long moment, Maya Williams sat in the hard plastic silence, breathing through the pain, staring at the street where justice had just looked her in the face and turned away. Then one thought settled cold and clear in her mind. The case she couldn't solve had just made its first mistake. It had touched her. The cruiser pulled away from the curb with Maya Williams trapped in the back seat. Her wrists locked behind her, and her burned leg pressed painfully against the hard plastic floor. She turned her face toward the window, not because there was anything she wanted to see, but because she refused to let Officer Daniel Briggs watch her suffer. The street slipped past in broken pieces. Two boys frozen beside their bicycles, a pickup truck slowing near the corner, and the older woman still standing on her porch with her phone raised. Maya held on to that image. Someone had seen it. Someone had recorded it. That mattered. Before we go any further, if you feel what Maya is feeling right now, if you believe no one should be humiliated, hurt, or silenced by the people who are supposed to protect them, please hit the like button and tell us in the comments where you are watching from today, your city, your state, or your country, because you never know. Someone near you might be watching this same story right now, feeling the same anger, the same hope, and the same need for justice. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. Briggs looked at her through the rearview mirror. "Not so confident now, are you, Judge?" His partner sat silently in the passenger seat. His name tag read Cole. He was younger than Briggs, maybe barely 30, and he kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead as if looking at Maya would make him responsible for what had happened. Maya swallowed against the pain in her scalp and the burning in her leg. "I need medical care," she said. "You pushed me into the exhaust pipe." Briggs laughed. "You fell. You shoved me. You resisted. I did not." He tapped the steering wheel with 2 fingers. "That's the problem with people like you. You rewrite everything the second it doesn't go your way." Maya looked at him in the mirror. "There is a witness recording." For a moment, his smile faded. Then he forced it back. "People record everything now. Doesn't mean they understand what they saw." Maya turned slightly toward the passenger seat. "Officer Cole, you saw what happened. I identified myself. I asked for the report number. I asked to retrieve my credentials. I was injured and arrested without cause." Cole's throat moved as he swallowed, but he did not turn around. Briggs glanced at him. "You got something to say, rookie?" Cole's hands tightened in his lap. "No." Maya watched him carefully. She knew that look. She had seen it in witnesses before. People who knew the truth, but were not yet brave enough to say it out loud. Cole was afraid, not confused. Afraid. The cruiser turned onto the main road. Maya shifted her leg slightly, and pain shot up her calf. She held her breath and kept the sound inside. She would not give Briggs the satisfaction. Instead, she began organizing everything in her mind. The stop, the words he used, the force, the cuffs, the tow truck, the witness, the missing report, the injury. Every detail mattered. Truth was not enough by itself. Truth needed records. Truth needed structure. Truth needed someone strong enough to carry it when power tried to bury it. At the precinct, Briggs opened the cruiser door and pulled her out by the arm. Maya nearly stumbled when her injured leg touched the ground. Cole moved as if he wanted to help, but Briggs shot him one hard look, and the younger officer stopped. "Walk," Briggs ordered. "I am walking," Maya said quietly. Inside, the station smelled of old coffee, floor cleaner, and stale paper. Conversations faded as Briggs marched her through the front room. A desk sergeant looked up from his computer. Two officers near the vending machine stopped talking. Maya saw the judgment on their faces before anyone said a word. They saw a black woman in cuffs. They saw Briggs behind her. They thought they already knew the story. Then, Briggs raised his voice. "Got one claiming she's a federal judge." A few officers laughed. Not everyone, but enough. The desk sergeant leaned back in his chair. His nameplate read, "Fuller, a federal judge." "Huh?" Maya stood as straight as the cuffs and pain allowed. "My name is Maya Williams. I am a United States District Judge for the Northern District. My credentials are in the side compartment of my motorcycle, which Officer Briggs unlawfully impounded. I am requesting medical attention, removal of these cuffs, and immediate contact with the Chief Judge's chambers and the FBI field office." The room changed. The laughter disappeared. Fuller blinked once. "Spell your last name." "Williams. Williams." Briggs stepped closer to the desk. "Don't waste time on this." She was stopped on a possible stolen vehicle match. She became non-compliant and tried to reach into a compartment after being told not to. "That is false," Maya said. Briggs turned toward her. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" "No," Maya said, meeting his eyes. "Not when a crime is happening in front of me." Something dark flashed across his face. Fuller began typing. At first, he looked bored and irritated. Then the screen changed. His fingers froze over the keyboard. His eyes moved across the monitor once, then again. He leaned closer, as if the words on the screen might change if he stared hard enough. Briggs noticed. "What?" Fuller did not answer. "What?" Briggs repeated, sharper now. Fuller slowly turned the monitor. Briggs stepped around the desk and looked. For the first time since he had dragged Maya off her motorcycle, Daniel Briggs had nothing to say. The silence spread across the room. One officer lowered his coffee gourd. Another looked away. Cole finally turned his head, his face pale. Fuller cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice had lost all its casual arrogance. "Take the cuffs off her." Briggs snapped his head toward him. "Absolutely not." Fuller looked at him hard. "Take the cuffs off, Judge Williams." The title landed in the room like a gavel. Judge Williams. Not suspect, not liar, not animal. Judge. Briggs tried to recover. "Her title doesn't change what happened on the street." "No," Maya said quietly. "But it changes who gets to review it." Fuller stood. "Officer Cole, remove the cuffs." Cole moved immediately. His hands shook as he unlocked the metal from Maya's wrists. Pain rushed through her hands as the blood returned. Red marks circled both wrists. She flexed her fingers once, then stopped because she did not want anyone to see how badly they trembled. Fuller saw the marks. Then his eyes dropped to the way she was holding her leg. "You said you were injured." "I was pushed into the exhaust pipe of my motorcycle. I have a burn on my right calf. My scalp was injured when Officer Briggs grabbed my hair and pulled my head backward." Fuller's expression tightened. "Get medical in here." Briggs laughed under his breath. "This is ridiculous." Maya turned to him. Her voice was calm now, colder than anger. "No, Officer Briggs. What happened on that street was ridiculous. This is procedure." A door opened at the far end of the room. A gray-haired commander stepped out in a dark uniform. His name was Alan Pierce. He looked at Maya first, then Briggs, then the silent officers around them. No one needed to explain the whole story. The room already told him enough. Pierce walked toward Maya. "Judge Williams," he said carefully. "I'm Commander Pierce. I've contacted the chief's office. Your chambers will be notified." Maya held his gaze. "I want my statement documented fully." "It will be." "I want the body camera footage preserved." "It will be." "I want the tow record for my motorcycle. The call log for the alleged stolen vehicle report." and the names of every officer involved. Pierce paused for half a second. Understood. Briggs crossed his arms. Commander, with respect, she's turning a lawful stop into a circus. Maya looked at him, really looked at him now. Not at the badge, not at the uniform, at the man hiding behind both. No, she said. You turned a theft operation into a traffic stop. The words froze the room. Pierce's eyes sharpened. Briggs looked away too quickly, and in that small movement, Maya felt the first real piece of the puzzle click into place. The false stop, the tow truck arriving too fast, the missing report, the impound, the corruption case on her desk. They were not separate things. They were connected by the same hidden machine. She did not have the proof yet, but now she knew where the door was, and Daniel Briggs had just opened it. Commander Pierce led Maya Williams into a small interview room at the back of the precinct, the kind with beige walls, a bolted-down table, and a camera in the corner that everyone pretended not to notice. A young female paramedic arrived 5 minutes later, carrying a red medical bag and the tired gentleness of someone who had seen too many bad nights inside police stations. She knelt beside Maya's chair and carefully lifted the torn edge of her riding pants away from the burn on her calf. Maya did not flinch, but her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. That needs treatment, the paramedic said quietly. Second degree in places. You're going to blister. Commander Pierce stood near the door, hands clasped in front of him. His face did not change, but Maya noticed the way his eyes moved from the burn to the red marks around her wrists, then to the small swelling near her scalp, where Briggs had grabbed her hair. He was documenting it in his mind. That mattered. Not enough, but it mattered. I want photographs taken, Maya said. Pierce nodded. They will be, and I want them attached to my statement, not placed in a separate medical file where they can disappear. The paramedic glanced up. Pierce held Maya's gaze. Understood. The word was careful. Too careful. Maya had heard that tone before, from men who knew the truth and were already calculating the cost of admitting it. When the paramedic finished dressing the burn, Maya gave her statement on camera. She spoke slowly, with the clarity of a woman who knew every sentence might one day be read aloud in court. She described the stop, the racial insult, the accusation that she had stolen for a living, the moment she identified herself as a federal judge, the laughter, the hand in her hair, the shove, the burn, the cuffs, and the tow truck that arrived too quickly to be ordinary. Commander Pierce listened without interrupting. Officer Cole stood in the corner, pale and silent. Briggs was not in the room, but his presence remained like smoke after a fire. When Maya finished, Pierce turned off the recorder and said, Judge Williams, your chambers have been contacted. The chief judge's clerk is expecting your call. The FBI field office has also been notified. Maya studied him. And my motorcycle? Pierce hesitated. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. It's at Ridgeway Towing and Recovery. The name struck something in her memory, not loudly, but sharply enough that she sat a little straighter. Ridgeway. She had seen it before. Not once. More than once. Who authorized the tow? Officer Briggs? On what grounds? Vehicle suspected in connection with a theft report. What report number? Pierce looked down at the folder in his hands. I'm still waiting on that. Maya leaned back slowly. The room felt colder. There is no report, is there? Pierce did not answer. Officer Cole looked at the floor. That was answer enough. By the time Maya walked out of the precinct, the sun was dropping behind the municipal buildings, turning the glass doors gold. Her leg throbbed with every step. Her wrists ached. Her scalp still burned where Briggs had pulled her hair, but she kept her chin level. Outside, 2 news vans were already parked near the curb. Someone had moved fast. An older black woman stood beyond the reporters, holding her phone in both hands. She was the same woman from the porch. Silver hair, straight back, calm eyes. Maya paused. The woman stepped forward before the reporters could. Judge Williams? Maya nodded once. Yes. My name is Evelyn Carter, the woman said. I recorded everything. For the first time all afternoon, Maya felt something inside her loosen. Just a little. Evelyn's voice was steady, but not soft. I saw what he did. I heard what he called you. I saw him grab your hair. I saw the tow truck pull up before they even had you in the car." Maya looked at her carefully. "Have you shared the video?" "Not yet." Evelyn glanced toward the news cameras. "I wanted you to have it first. My husband marched in Selma when he was 19. He used to say there are moments when a phone becomes a witness. Today was one of them." Maya's throat tightened. She accepted the phone when Evelyn offered it, watching the first few seconds of the recording. There she was on the screen, still seated on the bike. Briggs already shouting. The angle was clear. The audio was worse than clear. It was undeniable. "You may be pressured," Maya said quietly. "They may try to make you doubt what you saw." Evelyn's expression hardened with the kind of dignity that only age and pain can build. "Honey, I was born in Mississippi in 1958. Men in uniforms have been trying to make me doubt my own eyes since I was 6 years old." Maya held her gaze. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter." "Don't thank me yet," Evelyn said. "Use it." Maya did. By 9 o'clock that night, the video was everywhere. Maya sat at her kitchen table with her right leg wrapped in fresh gauze, a cup of untouched peppermint tea in front of her, and her laptop open. Her small brick townhouse was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock her mother had given her when she became a judge. On the screen, Evelyn Carter's video replayed in sharp, brutal detail. Briggs shouting, Maya explaining, Briggs laughing, his hand grabbing her hair, her body slamming into the bike, the tow truck arriving like a scheduled appointment. The view count climbed so quickly it seemed unreal. Her phone buzzed again and again. Messages from clerks, former law professors, judges she had served beside, reporters she did not know. One from her mother simply read, "Baby, call me when you can breathe." Maya stared at that message longer than the rest. Then she called. Her mother answered on the first ring. "Maya? I'm here, Mama." A long silence followed, and in that silence lived every fear a mother could not speak out loud. "I saw the video," her mother said. Maya closed her eyes. "I know. Are you hurt? My leg is burned. My wrists are bruised. I'm all right. That is not the same thing." Maya almost smiled, but it didn't reach her face. "No, ma'am." Her mother exhaled slowly. "Your father would have been furious." That landed deeper than Maya expected. Her father had been a high school history teacher, the kind who wore a tie every day, even after retirement, and believed voting was a sacred act. He had taught Maya that America was not perfect, but it was worth holding accountable. "He would have told me to write everything down," Maya said. "He would have told you to eat first," her mother replied. "Then write everything down." This time, Maya did smile faintly. After the call, she warmed soup she barely tasted and opened the corruption file that had been haunting her for weeks. The case had arrived on her docket as a civil rights challenge involving questionable asset seizures, missing county records, and a towing contractor whose invoices never seemed to match the official stops. The allegations were serious, but thin. Too many gaps, too many vanished documents, too many people suddenly unable to remember who signed what. Maya had spent nights staring at the file, feeling the outline of something rotten beneath the paperwork but unable to touch it. Now, she pulled the folder closer. Ridgeway Towing and Recovery. There it was, on page 17, then page 23. Then, in an attachment marked as a vendor invoice, Ridgeway had appeared in 3 disputed seizure cases, each tied to vehicle impounds following traffic stops in the same county. Different drivers, different officers, same towing company. Maya's pulse slowed, not from calm, from focus. She opened a fresh legal pad and wrote 4 words at the top. Briggs, Ridgeway, no report. Then she wrote a 5th word and underlined it twice. Pattern. At 10:42 p.m., the county sheriff gave a televised statement. Maya watched from her kitchen table as Sheriff Charles Whitmore stood behind a podium draped in county seals, wearing a pressed uniform and the expression of a man deeply saddened by other people's outrage. "We are aware of the video circulating online," Whitmore said, his voice polished and patient. "While the footage is concerning, it does not show the full context of a lawful stop involving a vehicle connected to an active theft investigation." Maya leaned closer to the screen. Active theft investigation. He continued. Officer Briggs followed his training under difficult circumstances. The individual involved failed to comply with repeated lawful commands and made statements that could not be verified at the scene. The individual, not judge, not citizen, not injured woman. The individual. Maya turned off the television before the statement ended. For several seconds, she sat perfectly still, listening to the clock tick against the wall. Then she reached for her phone and dialed the number of Special Agent Raymond Ellis at the FBI field office. He had testified in her courtroom twice. Careful, man. No wasted words. He answered with no greeting. Judge Williams, I was about to call you. Then you already know this is bigger than a traffic stop. A pause. Yes, Ellis said. I do. Maya looked down at the legal pad. Briggs, Ridgeway. No report. Pattern. My motorcycle was taken to Ridgeway Towing, she said. That company appears in the corruption file already before my court. Sheriff Whitmore just referred to an active theft investigation, but Commander Pierce could not produce a report number. Ellis was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Do not contact Ridgeway yourself. Do not contact Briggs. Preserve everything you have. I already am. Good. We'll open a preliminary inquiry tonight. Maya looked toward the window. Outside, the street was dark and ordinary, porch lights glowing softly on brick houses, the kind of peace people trusted because they did not know what moved underneath it. Agent Ellis, she said, I want my bike back. You'll get it back. No, Maya said, her voice low. You misunderstand me. I want the truth first. On the other end of the line, Ellis said nothing. He didn't need to. After they hung up, Maya sat alone at the kitchen table. The video still paused on her laptop, her father's old fountain pen resting beside the legal pad. She touched the pen lightly, remembering how he used to grade essays at the dining room table, circling weak arguments in red ink and telling his students that facts were not enough if they were not arranged with courage. Maya picked up the pen. For the first time all day, her hand did not shake. The case had followed her onto the road, burned her leg, cuffed her wrists, and stolen her bike. Now she was going to follow it back. By dawn, Maya Williams had turned her dining room into a war room. The kitchen light above her table glowed pale yellow against the early morning dark, falling over stacks of case files, printed invoices, police stop records, county vendor contracts, and a road map of Brookhaven County spread beneath 3 coffee mugs she had used as paperweights. Her burned leg throbbed under the bandage. Her wrists were still bruised in dark half-moons, but the pain had settled into the background now. No longer the loudest thing in the room. The loudest thing was the pattern. Ridgeway Towing and Recovery appeared too often to be coincidence. First in the lawsuit that had landed before her court 6 weeks earlier, then in 3 civil complaints filed by drivers who claimed their vehicles had been seized after questionable traffic stops, then in county payment records, then in Sheriff Whitmore's own campaign finance disclosures, not directly, never directly, but through a consulting firm that shared an address with Ridgeway's owner. Maya circled the address in red. Of course, she whispered. She reached for her coffee, found it cold, and drank it anyway. At 7:12 a.m., her phone rang. Special Agent Raymond Ellis. I hope you slept, he said. I hope you're not calling to lie to me this early. There was a small pause, then a dry breath that almost became a laugh. Fair enough. We pulled the preliminary records. There is no active theft report matching your motorcycle. Maya closed her eyes for 1 second. She had known it. Still, hearing it confirmed gave the lie weight. None? She asked. None. No stolen vehicle report. No bolo. No dispatcher note. Nothing entered into the system before the stop. And after, that's where it gets interesting, Ellis said. A suspicious vehicle notation was added 42 minutes after your arrest. Maya looked toward the map. After the tow, Ellis confirmed. She picked up her father's fountain pen and wrote it down slowly. Report created after arrest. That means someone tried to backfill the justification, she said. That is what it looks like. What about Ridgeway? Ellis hesitated, and Maya heard paper shifting on the other end. We are still checking. But your instincts were right. Ridgeway has the exclusive towing contract for Brookhaven County law enforcement. Renewed 3 years ago. No competitive bidding. Maya's eyes moved to the vendor contract on her table. Signed by Sheriff Whitmore's office. Yes. And the owner? Grant Harlan. Former sheriff's deputy. Retired early. Owns Ridgeway now. Maya leaned back in her chair. Her calf pulled painfully, but she ignored it. Former deputy becomes towing contractor. Sheriff's department feeds him vehicles. Drivers lose property. Records vanish. And when someone complains, the department says every stop was lawful. That is the shape of it, Ellis said carefully. No, Maya replied, looking at the red circles spreading across her notes. That is the edge of it. After the call, she changed the bandage on her leg in the downstairs bathroom. The burn looked worse in the morning, red and angry beneath the ointment the paramedic had given her. She stared at it longer than she meant to, not because it frightened her, but because it made the entire thing undeniable. Pain had a way of cutting through legal abstraction. Civil rights violation, unlawful seizure, misconduct under color of law. Those were courtroom words. But this, the raw stripe across her skin, was what those words looked like when they touched a body. Her mother called just as Maya was buttoning a white blouse over her dark slacks. "You are not going into court today, are you?" her mother asked. "No, ma'am. Administrative leave until the chief judge reviews the conflict issue." "Good. Then you're going to eat breakfast." "Mama." Maya Elaine Williams. I did not ask for oral argument. Despite herself, Maya smiled. "Yes, ma'am." She made toast, scrambled eggs she barely wanted, and poured fresh coffee. She ate standing at the counter, because sitting made her legs stiffen. Through the kitchen window, she could see a neighbor walking a golden retriever along the sidewalk. The man lifted a hand in a small wave, then hesitated, as though he had seen the video and didn't know whether kindness should be casual or formal now. Maya waved back. That was the strange thing about public humiliation. It did not end when the moment ended. It moved into every grocery aisle, every front porch, every polite nod from someone who knew too much and not enough. At 9:30, Chief Judge Margaret Bell called from chambers. Her voice carried 70 years of Southern discipline and federal authority, wrapped in the calm of a woman who had outlived men who mistook volume for power. "Maya," she said, "how badly are you hurt?" "I'll heal. That was not my question." Maya looked down at her bandaged leg. Second-degree burn in places, bruised wrists, scalp tenderness. Nothing permanent. Do not minimize brutality because you survived it. The words landed hard. Maya sat slowly. "No, Judge. I am placing you on temporary administrative leave from all matters involving Brookhaven County pending review. Not as punishment, as protection for the integrity of the court, and for you." "I understand. I know you, Shu. But I also know you. You will try to carry the entire courthouse on your back if no one stops you." Maya said nothing. Chief Judge Bell softened slightly. "The corruption case will be reassigned for now. But I want you to document everything you know, everything you suspect. Dates, names, invoices, calls. If this reaches a federal investigation, clean records will matter more than outrage." Maya looked at the table covered in files. "Already started. I assumed as much." After the call ended, Maya returned to the dining room. She taped the Brookhaven County map to the wall and marked each disputed vehicle seizure with a red pin. The first pin went on Meridian Avenue, where an elderly black veteran named Harold Benton had lost his pickup after a stop for a cracked taillight. The second went near County Route 19, where a widow named Denise Mallory had her late husband's Cadillac impounded over an insurance question that was later dismissed. The third went on East Chapel Road, where a landscaper had lost his work van, and 2 weeks later, his business. By noon, there were 18 red pins. By 1, there were 23. Maya stood back and stared. The pins were not scattered. They formed a corridor, a hunting lane. Her phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn Carter. "I have 2 neighbors who say Ridgeway took their cars too. They're scared, but they'll talk, if you listen." Maya typed back, "I'll listen." Then another message arrived from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Judge. You already got lucky once." Maya stared at the screen, her expression still. Then she took a screenshot, saved it, sent it to Agent Ellis, wrote down the time. Fear moved through her, yes, but not the kind that made her step back. This was the old familiar fear she had seen in courtrooms, in victims, in witnesses, in people who had learned the hard way that powerful men did not need to shout to be dangerous. It was real. It deserved respect, but it did not deserve obedience. At 2:18 p.m., Agent Ellis called again. "We need to meet," he said. "Not at your house. Not at the courthouse." Maya looked at the map, the pins, the red corridor cutting through Brookhaven County like an open wound. "Where?" "There's a diner off Highway 6. Ruth's Kitchen. Back booth. 40 minutes. Maya almost laughed. "A federal investigation begins over meatloaf and sweet tea?" "In Georgia," Ellis said. "Half of them do." 40 minutes later, Maya walked into Ruth's Kitchen with a slight limp and a folder under her arm. The diner smelled of fried chicken, coffee, and biscuits fresh from the oven. Older couples sat in vinyl booths, speaking softly over plates of gravy and eggs. A veteran in a faded navy cap nodded to Maya as she passed, the old-fashioned courtesy of a man raised to acknowledge dignity when he saw it. Agent Ellis sat in the back booth with 2 coffees already on the table. Beside him was a woman Maya did not know, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing a navy blazer and no jewelry except a plain wedding band. "This is Special Agent Carla Monroe," Ellis said. "Public Corruption Unit." Monroe extended her hand. "Judge Williams." Maya shook it and sat down carefully. "You found something." Monroe slid a thin folder across the table. "We found a lot of smoke. We need fire." Maya opened the folder. Inside were copies of towing invoices, asset forfeiture notices, and internal county emails with names blacked out. Monroe tapped the top page. Ridgeway was notified before several traffic stops were officially logged. Not after. Before. Maya's pulse slowed again. That cold courtroom focus moving through her. Pre-positioned towing. "That is what we think." Ellis leaned forward. "But we don't have the instruction chain. We don't know who was selecting vehicles, who was alerting Ridgeway, or who was protecting the paperwork afterward." Maya looked from one agent to the other. "Briggs." "Maybe," Monroe said. "But Briggs may only be the hand. We need the head." Outside the diner window, trucks rolled past on Highway 6, ordinary people moving through an ordinary afternoon, unaware of how many quiet systems could be built to take from them. Maya closed the folder. "Then we start with my bike," she said. Ellis frowned slightly. "Judge, they wanted it badly enough to burn me, cuff me, lie about me, and tow it before a report existed." Maya's voice stayed low, controlled. "That means my bike is not just property. It's evidence." Monroe studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Ridgeway Towing closes its front office at 6. Maya looked at the untouched coffee in front of her. "Then we should find out what they do after 6. And for the first time, since the cruiser door slammed shut, she felt the investigation turn from something that had happened to her into something she could hunt. Ruth's Kitchen was nearly empty when Maya Williams stepped back into the parking lot, with Special Agent Raymond Ellis on one side of her and Special Agent Carla Monroe on the other. The afternoon sun had begun to lower, stretching the shadows of pickup trucks and old sedans across the cracked pavement. For a moment, the smell of fried chicken and coffee still clung to Maya's blouse, strangely domestic against the weight of what they had just agreed to do. Ellis walked with his hands in his coat pockets, his eyes moving across the lot out of habit. "You understand we can't simply walk into Ridgeway and seize records without a warrant." "I know," Maya said. "And we can't use you as bait." Maya glanced at him. "I wasn't offering." Monroe gave a quiet, humorless smile. "Good, because I was about to object." Maya stopped beside her car. "But my motorcycle is there. It was seized without a valid report, under a false pretense, after an officer assaulted me. That gives us a legitimate reason to verify the impound record." Ellis nodded reluctantly. "A narrow reason." "Narrow doors still open," Maya said. That evening, they did not go in as a raid team. They went in quietly, legally, and with just enough pressure to make liars nervous. Maya stayed in Ellis's unmarked sedan across the street from Ridgeway Towing and Recovery, while Monroe and Ellis walked through the front gate, with badges visible and questions ready. Ridgeway sat on 5 acres behind a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Rows of impounded vehicles filled the lot like forgotten lives. Work trucks, motorcycles, family SUVs, a church van with faded lettering on the side, an old Buick with a child's car seat still visible through the rear window. Sodium lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in a sick yellow glow. The place looked less like a business and more like a graveyard where ordinary people's stability came to die. Maya watched from the sedan, her burned leg aching beneath her slacks. Her bike was near the back fence. Even from a distance, she recognized its shape beneath the lights, the matte black frame, the angle of the handlebars, the clean line of the bodywork. Seeing it there, trapped among seized vehicles, made something inside her tighten. It was not just property. It was proof of how quickly a person could be stripped down to a file number. Inside the office, a heavyset man in a Ridgeway Towing polo shirt appeared behind the counter. Grant Harlan, owner of record, former deputy, too polished to be a mechanic, too watchful to be merely a businessman. Ellis and Monroe spoke to him for 13 minutes. Maya could not hear the conversation, but she could read posture. Harlan smiled too often. He spread his hands in exaggerated confusion. He shook his head before questions were fully asked. Then he looked past the agents, through the front window, straight toward the sedan. Maya did not look away. When Ellis and Monroe returned, Monroe slid into the passenger seat and shut the door without speaking. Ellis got behind the wheel and stared through the windshield. "Well?" Maya asked. Ellis exhaled. "They claim your motorcycle was brought in under a standard county hold. With what case number? That's the problem. The case number on the impound form belongs to a burglary complaint from 6 months ago." Maya turned slowly toward him. "Not a vehicle theft?" "No. Residential burglary. Unrelated address. Unrelated victim. Closed file." Monroe handed Maya a copied impound sheet. They reused a dead case number. Maya stared at the paper. The date, the time, the officer authorization, Daniel Briggs, the receiving company, Ridgeway Towing and Recovery. In the small box marked reason for tow, someone had typed suspected stolen property. Her father used to say that sloppy lies were a gift, because they revealed the liar's hurry. "This wasn't just backfilled," Maya said. "It was backfilled, badly, which means they panicked," Monroe replied. Ellis started the car. "Or they never expected anyone with authority to check. They drove away without retrieving the motorcycle. That was the hardest part." Maya watched the lot disappear in the side mirror, her jaw tight, her hands folded in her lap to keep them still. Every instinct in her wanted to walk back through that gate, take her bike, and dare them to stop her. But justice done too early could ruin justice done correctly. She knew that better than most. By morning, the pattern had grown teeth. Maya spent the next day at her dining room table with Evelyn Carter, sitting across from her. Both women surrounded by coffee cups, affidavits, and a plate of pound cake Evelyn had brought because, as she put it, bad men should not be fought on an empty stomach. Evelyn had called her neighbors. Then, those neighbors had called cousins, church members, former co-workers, and one retired postal carrier who seemed to know every injustice committed in Brookhaven County since 1989. By noon, Maya had spoken to 7 people whose vehicles had been taken after traffic stops that sounded less like law enforcement and more like harvesting. Harold Benton came first, 72 years old, Vietnam veteran, pressed shirt, polished shoes, voice steady, until he described watching Ridgeway take his pickup. He had used that truck for doctor appointments, groceries, and driving 2 widows from his church to Sunday service. "They said my taillight was out," he told Maya. "It wasn't. My grandson had changed both bulbs that morning. I had the receipt in the glove box. Officer never looked at it." "What happened to the charge?" Maya asked. "Dropped. But by then Ridgeway wanted more in storage fees than the truck was worth." He folded his hands on the table, staring down at the knuckles. "A man works his whole life, pays taxes, serves his country, keeps his yard clean, says yes sir and no sir, and still they can take what he needs with a clipboard. Maya wrote every word down. Next came Denise Mallory, 61, a widow who still wore her wedding ring 8 years after her husband died. Ridgeway took his Cadillac, the car he had driven her home in after her last chemotherapy treatment. She cried only once, and only when she described seeing the car later on an auction website. I wasn't even angry at first, Denise said. That's the shameful part. I was embarrassed, like I had done something wrong just by being stopped. Maya looked up from her notes. That shame belongs to them. Denise nodded, but her eyes said she was still learning how to believe it. By late afternoon, the wall map had become a field of red pins. Meridian Avenue, East Chapel Road, County Route 19, the same corridor, the same officers, appearing again and again. Briggs most often, 2 others nearly as much. Each stop followed by a tow, each tow followed by fees, each dismissed charge followed by a lost vehicle. Agent Monroe arrived at 5 with a folder under her arm and a grim expression. We got preliminary financials, she said, stepping into the dining room. Ridgeway's revenue spikes line up with enforcement surges along your pinned corridor. Ellis came in behind her carrying a cardboard tray of coffees, and county forfeiture deposits increase within 30 days of those spikes. Evelyn crossed her arms. So, they were stealing cars with paperwork. Monroe looked at her. That is one way to describe it. That is the plain way, Evelyn said. The rest is what lawyers say, so nobody has to picture it. Maya almost smiled. Then she looked back at the map, and the smile faded. There were too many pins, too many lives interrupted, too many people who had learned to lower their voices when discussing men with badges. At 6:40 p.m., Ellis's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Maya watched him through the doorway as his expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. When he came back, his voice was quiet. We have a problem. Monroe straightened. What kind? The county system shows a maintenance sweep scheduled for tonight. Sheriff's Department servers, towing coordination logs, dispatch archives. Maya felt the room tighten around her. A deletion could be routine, Ellis said, but even he did not sound convinced. Monroe took out her phone. I'll call cyber. Maya looked at the map again. Briggs, Ridgeway, Whitmore, the corridor, the tow logs, the fake case number, the people at her table who had waited years for someone to believe them. Then, she saw it clearly. The machine did not only take cars, it erased the road behind itself. What time? She asked. Ellis checked his notes. Midnight. Evelyn's face hardened. They know you're close. Maya looked down at her father's fountain pen resting beside Harold Benton's affidavit. For a moment, she heard his old voice in her memory. Facts are fragile. Baby, courage is what keeps them alive long enough to matter. She picked up the pen and capped it. Then we don't wait for morning, Maya said. Ellis met her eyes. Judge Williams, what are you suggesting? Maya stood slowly, careful of her burned leg, but with a steadiness that made everyone in the room fall silent. I'm suggesting, she said, that if they built their kingdom on records, we find those records before they bury them. Outside, the first storm clouds gathered over Brookhaven County, darkening the evening sky. Inside the house, the map of red pins seemed to glow under the kitchen light. Each one a wound, each one a witness. And for the first time, Maya understood the size of what they were facing. This was not misconduct. It was an industry. And industries did not fall because someone asked politely. The storm reached Brookhaven County before midnight. Rain tapped against Maya Williams's windows in steady, nervous fingers, while the people in her dining room moved with the quiet focus of a field office before a raid. Special Agent Carla Monroe stood over the map, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in clipped sentences to the FBI cyber unit. Agent Raymond Ellis was at the kitchen counter, laptop open, cross-checking county server addresses against the vendor list Monroe had brought. Evelyn Carter sat beside Harold Benton's affidavit, reading each page as if it belonged to someone from her church, someone whose name deserved to be spoken correctly. Maya stood near the wall of red pins, her bandaged leg aching. her eyes fixed on the corridor that had become the spine of the entire operation. Meridian Avenue, East Chapel Road, County Route 19. Stop, Tau, fee, dismissal, loss, repeat. At 10:17 p.m., Monroe ended her call and looked up. Cyber says the maintenance sweep is being routed through a contractor account, not county IT directly. Which contractor? Maya asked. Monroe checked her notes. Harlan Data Services. Evelyn let out a short breath. Harlan. As in Ridgeway's grant, Harlan? Ellis turned from the counter. Brother. Peter Harlan. Owns the data company that manages the sheriff's department server backups. For a moment, no one spoke. The rain filled the silence. Maya looked at the map again, and the shape grew uglier. One brother hauled the vehicles. The other guarded the records. The sheriff supplied the authority. Officers supplied the bodies. The county supplied the paperwork. It was not merely corruption. It was family business, dressed in public service. Can Cyber stop the wipe? Maya asked. Not without a warrant or consent, Monroe said. But we may have another way. The maintenance sweep has to leave an activity trail. If we can preserve the server state before midnight, we can compare what changed afterward. Ellis closed his laptop. We need someone inside County IT willing to verify the scheduled task. Maya thought of Commander Pierce, careful and guarded. Then Officer Cole, pale in the precinct, eyes on the floor, fear tightening his throat, as if summoned by the thought. Maya's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Everyone in the room saw her look at it. Maya answered and put it on speaker. This is Maya Williams. For 3 seconds, there was only breathing. Then, a young male voice said, Judge Williams? Maya's eyes moved to Ellis. Yes, it's Evan Cole. Ellis straightened. Monroe reached slowly for her notepad. Maya kept her voice steady. Officer Cole, are you safe? A pause. I don't know. That answer told her more than a yes would have. Where are you? In my car. Behind the old Methodist church off Palmer Road. His voice was low, strained. Rain hammered faintly in the background. I can't stay long. Maya sat down at the table. Tell me what you need to say. Cole breathed shakily. There was never a stolen bike report. Briggs saw you on Meridian and said, that one's worth something. Then he radioed Ridgeway before he approached you. Evelyn closed her eyes. Maya wrote the words down exactly. Cole continued. Faster now, as if courage had a short battery life. The tow truck was already 2 blocks away. It wasn't random. It never is. They call them premium holds. High-value vehicles, easy pretext. Driver looks like they won't fight it or can't afford to. Maya's pen paused only long enough for the anger to pass through her hand. Who is they? She asked. Briggs, Latham, Price, Sergeant Keene. Sheriff Whitmore knows. Everybody pretends he doesn't, but he does. Cole swallowed audibly. Ridgeway pays out through consulting fees, campaign events, cash jobs, sometimes repairs that never happened. Monroe scribbled quickly. Ellis asked, Officer Cole, this is Special Agent Ellis with the FBI. Are there records? Cole went silent. Maya leaned closer to the phone. Evan, listen to me. I know you're scared, but if they are deleting records tonight, people will lose the truth for good. His voice came back thinner. There's a log. The room seemed to tighten around that single word. What kind of log? Maya asked. An off-book spreadsheet. Shared drive. Not labeled, obviously. It tracks stops by corridor, vehicle type, officer, estimated value, Ridgeway response time, final outcome. He drew a broken breath. There's a column called recovery potential. Harold Benton's face came into Maya's mind. Denise Mallory's trembling hands. Her own bike lifting onto the tow bed. Do you have access? Monroe asked. I did. I don't know if I still do. After the video, Briggs told me to forget what I saw. Then Sergeant Keene said young officers with families should learn which doors not to open. You have a family? Maya asked. A softer silence followed. My wife is 7 months pregnant. There it was. The hook in him. Not greed. Fear. Maya's voice softened, but did not weaken. Then think about the county your child is going to grow up in. Cole made a sound that might have been a laugh, if it had not been so close to breaking. That's why I called. A loud thump sounded over the phone. Distant, but sharp. Cole stopped breathing. Maya sat forward. Evan? Another sound came through, like tires splashing through water. I have to go, he whispered. Do not hang up, Ellis said. Stay on the line. I can't. They're here. The call went dead. For one stunned second, the dining room was still. Then everything moved at once. Ellis grabbed his keys. Monroe called the field office. Maya stood too quickly and nearly stumbled as pain shot up her burned leg. Evelyn caught her elbow. You are not driving into a storm with that leg, Evelyn said. Maya looked at her. He called me. And now you call the people with badges who can get there alive. Ellis was already at the door. We're going. Stay here. Both of you. If Cole calls again, record everything. Maya did not argue. Not because she wanted to obey, but because she knew he was right. The hardest discipline was staying still when action called your name. The agents left into the rain. For the next 43 minutes, Maya paced between the kitchen and dining room, phone in hand, every nerve listening. Evelyn made coffee no one drank. The television stayed muted, blue light flickering across the walls. Outside, thunder rolled low over the county. At 11:26 p.m., Ellis called. We found his car, he said. Maya gripped the counter. And Cole? Gone. The word struck the room cold. Any sign of violence. Driver's door open. Phone smashed on the pavement. No blood visible. We're searching the church grounds now. Maya closed her eyes. Officer Cole's voice echoed in her head. Young officers with families should learn which doors not to open. At 11:41, Monroe called from a second line. Cyber just got a preservation order through an emergency duty magistrate. We're serving it electronically before midnight. Will it be enough? Maya asked. It should freeze the county side. The contractor side? A pause. That depends on whether Harlan Data complies before the sweep runs. Maya looked at the clock. Shahid and Sishasenfen. 17 minutes. Evelyn stood beside her, arms folded tight. Baby, I've lived long enough to know when the devil owns a watch. At Amber. Ellisic's. Maya's laptop chimed. An email arrived from an address she did not recognize. No subject. One attachment. Maya did not touch it. She called Monroe. I received a file, she said. Unknown sender. Forward it to the secure address I'm sending you now. Don't open it. Maya forwarded it. Hands steady only because she forced them to be. At 12:09 a.m., Monroe called back. Her voice was changed, controlled, but electric. It's from Cole, she said. He must have scheduled the send before he ran. Maya sat down slowly. What is it? A partial export of the log, Evelyn whispered. Thank God, Monroe continued. It's incomplete, but it shows your bike. Listed before the stop. Officer assigned. Briggs. Tow partner. Ridgeway. Recovery potential. High. Maya stared at the map. The red pins blurring for one brief second before she blinked them clear. Is it admissible? She asked. Not by itself. But it tells us where to look. Outside. The storm began to ease. Rain softening against the roof like exhausted applause. Maya looked at her father's fountain pen on the table. Then at Evelyn Carter. Then at the wall of names and roads and losses. Officer Cole was missing. The records were under attack. The people behind this were no longer hiding behind procedure. They were moving in the open because fear had finally reached them. That meant they were close. Maya picked up her pen and wrote a new line beneath the others. Find Evan Cole. Then she wrote another. The log exists. And beneath that, slowly, with the weight of every person who had been ignored before her, she wrote, they can still be beaten. By 3 a.m., the storm had passed, but no one inside Maya Williams's house mistook the quiet for peace. The windows were dark mirrors now, reflecting the dining room back at itself. Evelyn Carter wrapped in a cardigan at the end of the table. Special Agent Raymond Ellis, speaking softly on the phone near the hallway. Agent Carla Monroe hunched over her laptop, and Maya standing before the map of Brookhaven County with one hand braced on the back of a chair because her burned leg had started to tremble from exhaustion. Officer Evan Cole was still missing. His partial export had changed everything, but it had not saved him. Maya stared at the new printout Monroe had brought from the FBI's secure system. It was only 7 pages, a broken fragment of a much larger file. But even fragments had voices, if you knew how to listen. The columns were simple enough. Date, corridor, officer, vehicle type, estimated value, tow partner, recovery potential, clean headings, business-like language. Evil often wore plain clothes. Her own entry sat halfway down the 3rd page. Black sport motorcycle. Estimated value, $28,000 plus. Corridor, Meridian. Officer, Briggs. Tow partner, Ridgeway. Recovery potential, high. Maya touched the edge of the paper but did not pick it up. She was afraid if she held it too tightly, her anger would leave marks. "They didn't just see me," she said. "They selected me." Monroe looked up from her laptop. "Cole's file gives us probable direction, not full proof. We still need the original log or a complete backup. Something with metadata. Access history. Authorship." Ellis ended his call and came back into the room. His face told them there was no good news before he spoke. "They found Cole," he said. Maya turned slowly. "Alive?" "Yes. Shaken. Bruised. He was left near a service road behind Palmer Creek. Someone took his phone, wallet, and department ID. EMTs are with him now." Evelyn sat back and closed her eyes. "Lord, keep that boy breathing long enough to become brave." "What did he say?" Maya asked. "Not much yet," Ellis replied. "But he told the first responding agent one thing. Backup mirror." Monroe frowned. "Backup mirror?" Maya looked at the log fragment again. "Maybe not a place. Maybe a system." Ellis nodded. "Cyber is checking. Harlan Data had a primary server, a local backup, and possibly a mirrored archive for disaster recovery. If Cole knew the log was on the shared drive, he may have known the drive mirrored somewhere else. "Somewhere Peter Harlan forgot to wipe," Monroe said. Maya's pulse steadied. There it was again. The flaw in every corrupt machine. Arrogance. Men who built secret systems eventually trusted their own cleverness too much. At 4:20 a.m., the first real break came from an FBI cyber analyst named Jonah Price, who appeared on Monroe's laptop by video call with tired eyes, a gray hoodie, and the look of a man who had been living on vending machine coffee for too many hours. "I found the mirror," Jonah said. "Not inside county infrastructure. Harlan Data used an off-site cloud redundancy service for client disaster recovery. Cheap vendor. Automated sync every 6 hours. Monroe leaned toward the screen. "Was it wiped?" "No." The deletion command hit the county server and Harlan's local backup. It never propagated to the off-site mirror because the account credentials expired last month. Jonah rubbed his eyes. "Somebody forgot to update billing." Evelyn let out a soft laugh from the end of the table. "The Lord works in mysterious invoices." Maya did not smile, but something loosened in her chest. "Can you preserve it?" Ellis asked. "Already requested emergency preservation through the provider," Jonah said. "But to pull full content, we need legal authorization." Monroe looked at Maya. "We can get a warrant." Maya's voice was quiet. "Then get one. By sunrise." Brookhaven County looked scrubbed clean by the storm. Wet lawns glistened under pale light. Water dripped from gutters. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked at the mail truck like the world had returned to normal. Inside Maya's house, nothing had returned to normal. Chief Judge Margaret Bell signed the emergency application at 6:48 a.m. From her chambers, her voice dry and severe over the phone. "Tell the agents they have exactly what they need." "And Maya?" "Yes, Judge? Do not confuse endurance with invincibility. Sit down before that leg makes the decision for you." "Yes, ma'am." Maya sat. The warrant was served electronically at 7:15. The cloud provider responded at 7:29. By 8:06, Jonah Price had a full forensic image of the mirrored archive. Monroe patched his screen onto Maya's dining room television because the laptop was too small for everyone crowded around it. Folders appeared first. then timestamps, then file names. One folder was labeled Route Productivity. No one spoke. Jonah opened it. The complete log filled the screen. 43 entries, 4 years, 19 officers, 3 primary corridors, vehicle categories, driver descriptions, coded in abbreviations that made Evelyn curse under her breath, estimated values, Ridgeway dispatch times, storage fees, auction outcomes, officer initials, supervisor approvals, and there, in a final column, the phrase that made the whole room go still, judicial risk. Maya leaned forward. What does that mean? Jonah clicked into the notes on her entry. The note read, female black rider, high-value bike, possible professional, confirm before tow, avoid courthouse exposure. Monroe whispered, they knew there was a risk you had status. Ellis's jaw tightened. And Briggs proceeded anyway. Maya stared at the screen. Possible professional, avoid courthouse exposure. It was not only greed, it was calculation. They had known enough to be careful, but not enough to stop. Her dignity had not been invisible to them. It had been weighed against profit. Open the metadata, she said. Jonah did. The creation records traced back to a user account registered to Sergeant Thomas Keene. Updates came from Briggs, Latham, Price, and 2 county administrative accounts. Supervisor review entries appeared under Sheriff Charles Whitmore's office login. Not every time, but often enough. Ridgeway dispatch notes were attached as separate files, uploaded before several traffic stops officially occurred. Maya heard Denise Mallory's voice. I was embarrassed, like I had done something wrong just by being stopped. No, the wrong had been organized before the flashing lights ever appeared. Then Jonah opened the Ridgeway folder. Invoices, internal messages, tow assignments, auction sheets, a spreadsheet marked Projected Recovery Q3, photos of vehicles taken from public streets, driveways, parking lots, and church lots. Her motorcycle appeared in one of the photos, taken from a distance before the stop, likely by someone following or watching the corridor. Maya felt the room tilt, but only inside. They photographed my bike before Briggs stopped me, she said. Ellis stepped closer to the screen. Timestamp? Jonah clicked. The day before. Evelyn stood up slowly. They hunted you. The words were plain. There was no legal polish on them. That made them worse. Maya walked to the window, needing air, though she did not open it. Outside, an elderly man across the street was raising a small American flag on his porch, moving carefully, respectfully, as if ritual could still mean something if the right people kept it alive. Her father had done that every Memorial Day, even after arthritis made his hands stiff. He used to say a flag was not a compliment to the country. It was a promise demanded from it. Maya pressed her palm lightly against the window frame. I still believe in the promise, she thought. I just no longer trust the men who borrow it for cover. Behind her, Monroe said, we have enough for a full federal corruption investigation, civil rights conspiracy, obstruction, fraud, possibly extortion. Ellis added, but we move carefully. If Whitmore knows the mirror exists, he'll run. Maya turned back. He doesn't know. How can you be sure? Monroe asked. Because he held a press conference. Because Briggs laughed in my face. Because Ridgeway used a dead case number on my impound sheet. They're powerful, but they're not careful anymore. They've been believed for too long. At 9:12 a.m., Ellis received a call from the hospital where Evan Cole was being treated. Cole was awake. He was asking for Maya. Monroe objected immediately. No, absolutely not. You are a victim, a judge, and a witness. Too many roles in one room. Maya looked at Ellis. Is he willing to give a statement? Ellis listened to the phone, then nodded once. Only if she's present. Monroe shook her head. That is messy. Truth usually is, Evelyn said. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and overcooked oatmeal. Maya entered Cole's room with Ellis and Monroe beside her, walking slowly because her leg had stiffened in the car. Cole lay propped against pillows, one eye swollen, lips split, wrists bruised where he had been restrained. He looked younger than he had at the precinct. Without the uniform, He looked like somebody's son. When he saw Maya, his face broke. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Maya stood at the foot of the bed. "For what?" "For not stopping him. For letting Briggs do that to you. For knowing things and pretending I didn't." His voice trembled. "They told me if I talked, my wife would lose our insurance. They knew her due date. They knew the hospital." Sergeant Keene said accidents happen when men forget loyalty. Maya absorbed the words, feeling them settle beside every other cruelty. "Loyalty to corruption is not loyalty," she said. "It's surrender." Cole wiped at his face with a shaking hand. "I can testify." Monroe stepped forward. "You understand what that means?" He nodded, though fear flickered in every part of him. "I want my kid to know I told the truth once, when it mattered." Maya looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled the chair closer and sat. Not as a judge, not as a victim, but as a woman who understood the cost of opening a locked door. "Then start at the beginning," she said. Cole took a breath, and this time, the truth did not whisper. It began to speak. Cole's statement lasted 92 minutes. By the end of it, the hospital room had gone still in a way Maya Williams recognized from courtrooms just before a verdict. The air felt heavier because truth had finally entered it and taken up space. Agent Monroe had recorded everything. Agent Ellis had taken handwritten notes, his face calm but his pen moving faster whenever Cole mentioned a name. Maya sat beside the bed, her burned legs stiffening, her hands folded over her knee, saying very little because Cole no longer needed to be pulled forward. Once he began, the words came like water through a broken dam. He named Sergeant Thomas Keene as the man who maintained discipline inside the department. He named Briggs as one of the most aggressive collectors. He named officers Latham and Price as regular participants. He described how Ridgeway Towing received advance notice through coded dispatch language that sounded ordinary to anyone outside the circle. Stalled vehicle inquiry, routine corridor check, private lot assist. He explained that the phrase recovery potential meant the estimated profit after tow fees, storage charges, auction proceeds, and county forfeiture processing. He described Sheriff Whitmore's role carefully, not because he was protecting him, but because fear still made him precise. He never said, "Go steal cars," Cole said, staring at the blanket over his knees. "Men like that don't say it that way." He'd say, "Meridian's been productive this month," or "Ridgeway's response time has improved," or "Keep pressure where it pays." Everybody knew what he meant. Monroe asked, "Did money go directly to officers?" Cole nodded. "Sometimes cash, sometimes overtime approvals, sometimes Ridgeway repairs on personal vehicles that nobody paid for. Briggs got a transmission replaced on his truck last year. Latham's wife got a used SUV from a Ridgeway auction before it was listed publicly." Ellis looked up. "And you?" Cole's face tightened. "A set of tires. I told myself it was nothing. A favor. Then after that, it got harder to pretend I wasn't already in it." Maya watched shame move across him. Not theatrically, not for sympathy, but like a man finally seeing the stain on his own hands in daylight. "What made you call me?" she asked. Cole turned his swollen eye toward her. "Your voice." Maya waited. "On the street," he said. "You were scared, but you were still steady. Briggs kept trying to make you smaller, and you wouldn't shrink. My grandmother was like that." He swallowed. "She raised me after my mother died. Worked 31 years in a school cafeteria. Took 2 buses to church every Sunday. If somebody had treated her like that, I would have wanted one person standing there to tell the truth." Maya did not answer immediately. Some truths were too delicate to meet with easy comfort. "Finally," she said. "Then tell it well." Cole did. By late afternoon, a formal protective custody request was filed for Evan Cole, his wife, and their unborn child. The FBI moved them quietly, without patrol cars, without uniforms, without giving Brookhaven County a chance to interfere. Maya watched from the hospital hallway as Cole's wife arrived with a small overnight bag and one hand resting over her stomach. She looked frightened, exhausted, and angry in the way women become angry when fear threatens the people they love. When she saw Cole's face, she covered her mouth. He reached for her hand. "I'm sorry," She sat beside him, took his hand and said, "Then make it worth something." Maya looked away, giving them privacy. That sentence stayed with her. Make it worth something. That evening, the FBI's Public Corruption Unit moved into full operational mode. Warrants were drafted. Subpoenas were prepared. Financial records were frozen before anyone could move funds. The mirrored archive became the spine of the case, and Cole's testimony gave it a beating heart. By 8 p.m., Maya was back at her house with Ellis, Monroe, Evelyn Carter, and a secure video line open to Jonah Price from Cyber Forensics. The dining room no longer looked like a war room. It looked like the war had already begun. Jonah walked them through the full archive on the large television. "Ridgeway's internal folders are worse than the county log," he said. "They tracked people like inventory. Here, look at this." A spreadsheet opened, labeled Client Flow. Maya read the columns silently. Vehicle description, driver profile, likely resistance, tow window, auction category, storage threshold. Evelyn's voice was ice cold. Likely resistance? Jonah clicked one row. They rated drivers: elderly, low resistance; working class, moderate; professional, high; legal risk, avoid unless cleared. Maya felt her throat tighten. Harold Benton had been marked low resistance. Denise Mallory had been marked emotional but manageable. A landscaper named Rafael Ortiz had been marked language barrier, expedite. The cruelty was not merely in what they took, but in how carefully they measured the human cost before taking it. Monroe stood behind a chair, arms crossed. "This is predatory targeting. It's more than that," Maya said. "It's government power used as a collection agency." Ellis nodded. "Under color of law." The phrase sounded sterile. Maya hated that it was accurate. Jonah opened another folder. "There's correspondence between Grant Harlan at Ridgeway and Peter Harlan at Harlan Data. Mostly billing and system maintenance, but some messages reference the sheriff's office. One email appeared on the screen. Maya read it once, then again. Keep C. W. Looped on Meridian numbers. He wants stronger Q4 before campaign filing. To Z. V. Charles Whitmore. Sheriff Whitmore. The room went silent. Monroe leaned forward. "Can you authenticate that?" "Headers are intact," Jonah said. "Recovered from the mirror. Original timestamp preserved. I'll need a full forensic report. But yes, it looks clean." Maya looked at Ellis. "Campaign filing. That means Ridgeway money may be feeding Whitmore's political accounts." Ellis was already writing. "We'll trace donations, consulting entities, in-kind services, auction transfers." Evelyn shook her head slowly. "All those press conferences about law and order." Maya looked at the frozen email on the screen. "Law and order can become a costume when no one checks who's wearing it." At 9:32 p.m., Monroe received confirmation from the U.S. Attorney's Office. A federal grand jury would hear emergency evidence the next morning. Until then, no public movement, no arrests, no press. The danger lay in the hours between knowing and acting, when guilty men still believed the night belonged to them. At 10:15, Maya's doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Ellis moved first, one hand near his jacket. Monroe stepped toward the side window. Evelyn reached for her phone. Maya remained still, listening. The bell rang again, followed by a firm knock. "Maya Williams," a male voice called through the door. "This is Sheriff Charles Whitmore. We need to talk." Ellis motioned for silence. Maya's pulse slowed, not from calm, but from recognition. She had heard Whitmore's voice on television, smooth and mournful, wrapping lies in public concern. At her own front door, it sounded different, less polished, more urgent. Ellis whispered, "Do not open that door." Maya looked through the small side glass. Sheriff Whitmore stood on her porch in a dark raincoat, hat in hand, two uniformed deputies behind him near the walkway. No marked vehicle in front, no official visit. A private warning. Whitmore looked directly at the glass, as if he knew she was there. "Judge Williams, I came as a courtesy. Before this goes too far." Maya opened the inner door but left the security chain fastened. Ellis stood just out of sight. "It already went too far when your officer burned my leg and stole my motorcycle," she said. Whitmore's expression tightened. then reset into practiced patience. What happened to you was unfortunate. Officer Briggs may have been overzealous. Overzealous is not a synonym for criminal. One of the deputies shifted behind him. Whitmore lowered his voice. You're young, talented. You have a future. But right now you're emotionally close to a situation you don't fully understand. Maya almost smiled. Men like Whitmore always return to the same well. Calm down. Step back. Let wiser men handle the mess they created. I understand enough, she said. No, Whitmore replied softly. You understand pieces. Pieces can be dangerous when arranged by angry people. Behind Maya, Monroe quietly began recording. Whitmore leaned slightly closer to the door. There are families involved. Careers. Public trust. You start pulling beams out of a house. Don't be surprised when innocent people are crushed. Maya held his gaze through the narrow gap. Innocent people have already been crushed. His eyes hardened then. The mask slipped just enough for her to see the man underneath. Be careful, Judge, he said. A courtroom is a controlled place. The rest of the world isn't. Maya felt the fear. It moved through her body cleanly and left something stronger behind. My father used to say, the law is only controlled when honest people refuse to be intimidated by dishonest ones. Whitmore put his hat back on. Your father sounds like a man who never had to run a county. No, Maya said. He was a teacher. He knew exactly how hard it is to correct children who think rules are for everyone else. For one sharp second, Whitmore's face went cold. Then he stepped back. Good night, Judge Williams. Maya closed the door and locked it. No one spoke until the sheriff's footsteps faded from the porch. Evelyn broke the silence first. That man did not come to talk. No, Ellis said, looking at Maya. He came to measure what you know. Monroe checked her recording. And he just gave us consciousness of guilt, wrapped in a raincoat. Maya turned back toward the dining room, toward the map, the files, the names of people who had been taken from because they were elderly, grieving, poor, black, brown, alone, or simply unlucky enough to drive through the wrong corridor on the wrong day. Her motorcycle had been the trap they set, but their arrogance had made it evidence. By midnight, the final warrant packet was complete. Before dawn, federal agents would move on Ridgeway Towing, Harlan Data, and the sheriff's department. Maya stood at the window long after everyone else returned to work. Across the street, porch lights glowed in the dark like small acts of faith. For weeks, the corruption case had been a shadow without a face. Now it had names. It had records. It had victims. It had a sheriff standing on her porch pretending concern while threatening collapse. Maya touched the bandage on her wrist, then looked toward the wall where her father's old pen lay beside Cole's statement. The case had found her first, but now she had found its center. Federal agents moved before sunrise, when Brookhaven County was still half asleep, and honest people were making coffee, feeding dogs, packing lunches, and trusting that the world outside their front doors would behave itself. Maya Williams watched the first calls come in from her dining room table. Not from a command center, not from a courtroom, but from the same scarred oak chair where she had once graded law clerk memos and eaten late dinners alone. Her burned leg rested on a second chair, wrapped and throbbing. Her wrists were still bruised. Evelyn Carter sat across from her with a mug of coffee cooling between both hands. Neither woman spoke much. Some mornings were too heavy for ordinary conversation. At 5:42 a.m., Agent Monroe called from the field. We're at Ridgeway, she said. Maya straightened. Through the phone, Maya could hear engines, boots on gravel, clipped commands, moving through the cold morning air. Then Monroe's voice dropped lower. Gate is locked. No response from inside. Is Grant Harlan there? We believe so. His truck is parked by the office. A pause. Then, a metallic crash echoed through the line. Evelyn lifted her eyes. Monroe came back. Gates open. Maya closed her eyes for one breath and pictured the lot. Rows of stolen stability, work vans, family cars, motorcycles, trucks that had once carried groceries, tools, grandchildren, folding chairs for Sunday service. She pictured her own bike near the back fence, still and waiting beneath the sodium lights. Find the records room, Maya said softly. though Monroe had not asked. Monroe heard her anyway, already moving. At 5:51, Agent Ellis called from Harlan Data Services. "Peter, Harlan tried to wipe a workstation when we came through the door. Did he succeed?" "No. Jonah had a preservation lock in place before we arrived." Peter did not know that. For the first time in hours, Maya allowed herself the smallest breath of satisfaction. "And Peter?" she asked. "In custody." "Very quiet now," Evelyn murmured. "They always get quiet when the room stops belonging to them." At 6:07, a third call came in from the federal team outside the Brookhaven County Sheriff's Department. Maya did not answer it on speaker at first. She brought the phone to her ear and listened as the lead agent, Diane Torres, reported that Sheriff Charles Whitmore was in his office, that the warrant had been served, and that deputies in the building had gone silent as stone. "He asked if you were behind this," Torres said. Maya looked toward the window, where the first blue-gray light of morning touched the street. "What did you tell him? That the United States District Court was behind this?" Maya's throat tightened. Not with tears, with something older and steadier. "Good," she said. By 6:30, the local news had begun breaking into morning programming. At first, the reports were cautious. Federal activity at several county locations. Possible public corruption probe. FBI declining comment. Then a helicopter shot appeared over Ridgeway towing, showing agents moving between rows of vehicles while evidence technicians photographed license plates and tagged office boxes. Maya watched in silence as the camera panned across the lot and found her motorcycle. "There she is," Evelyn said quietly. Maya leaned forward. The matte black bike sat where she had last seen it, strapped behind a fence. Front tire turned slightly as if it had been interrupted mid-thought. An evidence technician moved around it carefully, photographing the frame, the toe marks, the impound sticker, the scrape near the exhaust pipe where her leg had struck. Maya's hand drifted unconsciously to her bandage. Evelyn saw. "That machine carried you into the truth." Maya kept her eyes on the screen. "No. They dragged me into it." "Same road," Evelyn said. "Different driver." At 7:15, the first complication hit. Monroe called again, and this time her voice carried frustration. "The records room at Ridgeway has been cleared out." Maya sat up. "Cleared out how?" "Filing cabinets empty. Office computer removed. Wall safe open. Someone got here before us." Evelyn muttered something under her breath that sounded like an old church curse. "What about the vehicles?" Maya asked. "Still here. Tow sheets and some glove boxes, auction stickers, partial paperwork. But the central files are gone." Maya felt the old pressure return, that familiar tightening at the edge of a case when proof slipped just beyond reach. Whitmore? Maybe. Or Grant Harlan got warning. From inside? Could be. Maya looked at the wall map. The pins had not moved. The people behind them had not stopped existing because cabinets were empty. "Search the trash," she said. Monroe paused. "What?" "People who destroy paper in a hurry always forget what they throw away. Trash bins, burn barrels, shredders, coffee-stained drafts, packing slips, anything with dates." There was a short silence. Then Monroe said, "You heard her. Check the trash." At 7:48, Ellis called from Harlan Data. "We found something." Maya gripped the phone tighter. Peter Harlan kept local diagnostic logs. He deleted user-facing files, but the diagnostic system recorded file movement before deletion. Names, paths, timestamps. "We can show which Ridgeway files were copied to an external drive at 3:12 this morning." "By whom?" "User account registered to Grant Harlan." Maya looked at Evelyn. "Grant moved the files before the warrant." "Where is he?" "That's the problem," Ellis said. "He wasn't at Ridgeway. His truck was. He's gone." The room went still. Maya stood too quickly, pain shooting through her calf. Evelyn rose with her, ready to catch her if needed. But Maya held the table and remained upright. "Grant has the original files," Maya said. "That's our working assumption. And if he reaches Whitmore's people, those files disappear. Also, our working assumption." Maya turned toward the television. The helicopter footage still circled Ridgeway. Agents moved through the lot. But somewhere beyond that camera, A man with the center of the case was driving away under a morning sky. At 8:03, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the old cannery. He always hides what he thinks he owns. Maya stared at it. Evelyn read over her shoulder. Who sent that? Maya's pulse slowed. I don't know. Another text arrived. Tell Cole I'm sorry. Maya's eyes lifted. Grant's wife, Evelyn said. Maya nodded once. Or someone close enough to know him. She forwarded the messages to Ellis and Monroe. 3 minutes later, Monroe called. The old cannery is 12 miles east of Ridgeway. Abandoned property. Harlan family owned it before foreclosure. Go now, Maya said. We are. The next 26 minutes were among the longest Maya had ever endured. She stood before the map with her arms folded, ignoring the pain, ignoring Evelyn's quiet pleas to sit. On the television, reporters speculated. On her phone, messages multiplied. Former colleagues, clerks, news producers, strangers calling her brave when she did not feel brave at all. Bravery was too clean a word for what this was. This was anger trained not to waste itself. At 8:34, Monroe called. We found him. Maya shut her eyes. Alive? Yes. Trying to burn boxes in a metal drum behind the cannery. We stopped him in time. Some documents damaged, most intact. External drive recovered from his jacket. Maya lowered herself slowly into the chair. Evelyn whispered, Thank you, Jesus. Monroe continued. Maya, there are signed payout sheets in these boxes. Officer names, Ridgeway auction profits, references to Whitmore's campaign committee. And your bike file is here. My bike file? Yes. Photo, estimated value, risk note, tow authorization prepared before the stop. Briggs signed it digitally the morning he pulled you over. The room blurred for 1 second. Maya placed her palm flat on the table until it passed. They had not improvised cruelty. They had scheduled it. At 9:20, federal agents walked Sheriff Whitmore out of the county building in handcuffs. The news cameras caught only his profile. Jaw locked, eyes forward, hat gone. He looked smaller without the podium. Officer Daniel Briggs was arrested at his home 15 minutes later, taken from his driveway in a gray sweatshirt, shouting that he had followed procedure until an agent placed a hand on his head and guided him into the back of a car. Maya watched without smiling. Evelyn looked at her. I thought seeing him cuffed would feel better. Maya's voice was quiet. It doesn't undo what he did. No, Evelyn said, but it stops him from doing it again today. That was true enough to matter. By noon, the U.S. Attorney's Office held a brief statement. Charges included conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, extortion, and asset forfeiture fraud. More arrests were expected. Victims would be contacted. Vehicles would be reviewed for return. Records would be audited. Maya listened to every word, but the one that stayed with her was victims, not claimants, not complainants, not individuals, victims. At 1:17 p.m., Agent Ellis arrived at Maya's house with a sealed evidence photograph of her motorcycle file. He placed it on the table without ceremony. You need to see this, he said. Maya opened the folder. There was her bike, photographed the day before the stop. Below it, a notation. Target approved. High recovery. Driver profile acceptable. Driver profile acceptable. For several seconds, Maya could not speak. Then she picked up her father's fountain pen and wrote beneath the printed page, in clear black ink, I was not acceptable. I was underestimated. Ellis looked at the sentence, then at her. The grand jury will move fast, but the civil case and criminal trial may still take time. I know. And Briggs has already retained counsel. He may claim he didn't know you were a judge. Maya closed the folder. He didn't need to know I was a judge. He needed to know I was a person. Evelyn nodded from the kitchen doorway. That will preach. Outside, afternoon light fell across Brookhaven County, soft and ordinary, as if the morning had not cracked open something rotten beneath it. But Maya knew better now. She knew how deep the roots went. She knew arrests were not the same as repair. She knew evidence could convict a man, but only memory could warn a community. That evening, She stood before the wall map one more time. The red pins remained. Tomorrow, they would become case numbers, witness statements, restitution claims, and courtroom exhibits. Tonight, they were still names: Harold Benton, Denise Mallory, Raphael Ortiz, Maya Williams, Evan Cole, Evelyn Carter, all of them connected by a road that men in power had turned into a trap. Maya touched the pin marking Meridian Avenue. The case she had chased in the dark had finally stepped into the light. And now came the harder part, making the light stay. The first federal hearing opened 11 days after the arrests, under a gray morning sky that made the courthouse steps look older than they were. Maya Williams arrived early, not through the judge's entrance, but through the front doors with everyone else. She wore a dark navy suit, a white blouse, and low heels that would not punish the healing burn on her leg more than necessary. Her wrists had faded from purple to yellow, but thin marks still circled the skin if a person knew where to look. She did not cover them with bracelets. Some evidence did not belong in a file. Outside the courthouse, reporters lined the sidewalk behind metal barricades. Cameras turned when she stepped from the car. Questions rose all at once, sharp and overlapping. Judge Williams, do you believe Sheriff Whitmore led the operation? Were you targeted because of your race? Will you return to the bench? Do you have a statement for the victims? Maya did not stop. Agent Ellis walked a few steps behind her, not guarding her exactly, but near enough to make distance clear. Evelyn Carter stood waiting near the courthouse doors in a charcoal coat and church gloves, her silver hair pinned neatly, her expression composed in a way that made her look both gentle and impossible to move. You came, Maya said. Evelyn tilted her head. Baby, I recorded the first act. I wasn't about to miss the second. Inside, the courthouse smelled of polished wood, old stone, coffee, and nerves. People filled the hallway. Former vehicle owners, attorneys, federal agents, clerks, journalists, and county residents who had taken off work because, for once, the men behind the counters and badges were the ones being asked to explain themselves. Harold Benton stood near a marble column in his best suit, medals pinned carefully to his lapel. Denise Mallory sat on a bench with both hands wrapped around a tissue, her late husband's wedding ring hanging on a chain around her neck. When Maya passed, Harold straightened. Judge Williams, he said. Mr. Benton. He nodded toward the courtroom doors. Never thought I'd live long enough to see this. Maya looked at him, then at the others gathered nearby. This is only the beginning. I know, he said. But beginnings count. They did. The hearing was not before Maya, of course. Chief Judge Margaret Bell had made certain of that. The case had been assigned to Senior Judge Nathaniel Graves, a 73-year-old jurist from Alabama with white hair, a slow walk, and a reputation for letting silence discipline a room better than anger ever could. Maya entered as a witness and victim, not as the authority presiding. That distinction mattered. It protected the case. It protected the court. It also forced her to sit among the people who had been harmed instead of above them. Perhaps, she thought, that was where she belonged today. The courtroom was nearly full when Daniel Briggs was brought in. He wore a gray suit that did not fit as well as his uniform had. Without the badge, without the belt, without the cruiser and the weapon and the practiced stance of street authority, he looked like a man trying to remember how to take up space. His attorney walked beside him, whispering near his ear. Briggs kept his eyes forward at first. Then, he saw Maya. The change was small, but unmistakable. His face drained. His steps slowed half a beat. The man who had laughed when she said she was a federal judge now stood in a federal courtroom and understood, finally, that the woman he had dragged from a motorcycle was not a rumor, not a bluff, not a story he could rewrite with a report number added after the fact. She was real, and so was the record. For one long second, their eyes met across the room. Maya did not smile. She did not glare. She simply looked at him with the steady composure he had tried so hard to tear out of her on Meridian Avenue. That seemed to disturb him more than rage would have. His attorney touched his elbow, urging him forward. Evelyn leaned slightly toward Maya. He looks like a man who just found out the floor has rules. Maya kept her eyes ahead. It always did. He just never had to feel them. Sheriff Charles Whitmore entered next. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, and no tie. A calculated choice, meant to suggest humility without defeat. His silver hair was combed back perfectly. He moved carefully, surrounded by attorneys, but he still tried to carry the room with him, nodding once to a former county commissioner, lowering his eyes with practiced sadness when he passed the benches filled with victims. Maya watched the performance with the cool attention of someone studying an old trick. Whitmore did not look at her right away. When he finally did, his expression changed almost imperceptibly. No fear, not yet, but recognition. The porch, the warning, the mistake of measuring her and finding only anger, not discipline. "All rise," the clerk called. The room stood. Judge Graves entered slowly and took the bench. He settled his papers, looked over the courtroom, and allowed the silence to gather until every cough and shifting shoe disappeared. "Be seated," he said. The first proceeding concerned detention. The government argued that Whitmore, Briggs, Grant Harlan, Peter Harlan, Sergeant Keene, and the others posed risks of obstruction, witness intimidation, and evidence destruction. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leah Ramsey presented the facts with clean force. She did not dramatize. She did not need to. The dates did the work. The mirrored archive, the attempted wipe, Cole's assault, Grant Harlan burning documents behind the old cannery, Whitmore's unannounced visit to Maya's home the night before the warrants. At that, Judge Graves looked over his glasses. "Sheriff Whitmore went to Judge Williams's private residence?" Ramsey nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." At approximately 10:15 p.m., accompanied by 2 deputies, without notice and without official purpose. Whitmore's attorney rose quickly. "Your Honor, my client intended only to de-escalate a public controversy." Judge Graves turned his gaze toward him, slow and severe. "Counsel, showing up at a witness's home at night with deputies is an unusual form of de-escalation." A low murmur moved through the courtroom before the judge's eyes silenced it. Maya felt Evelyn's gloved hand briefly touch her arm under the bench. Then came the evidence preview. A screen was rolled into place. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly. Ramsey displayed the first page of the recovered log. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough. Rows of stops. Vehicle values. Tow partners. Recovery potential. Then Maya's entry appeared. Black sport motorcycle. Estimated value, $28,000 plus. Corridor, Meridian. Officer, Briggs. Tow partner, Ridgeway. Recovery potential, high. Judicial risk, possible, professional. Avoid courthouse exposure. The words hung there, colder than any photograph. Briggs stared at the screen as if seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe men like him never expected the private language of contempt to be read under oath beneath the seal of the United States. Ramsey clicked again. The pre-stop photo of Maya's motorcycle appeared, time-stamped the day before the arrest. A sound escaped Denise Mallory behind Maya. Something between grief and vindication. Judge Graves leaned back slightly. "Miss Ramsey, is the government representing that this photograph was taken before the stop of Judge Williams?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And recovered from Ridgeway Towing's internal files?" "Yes, Your Honor." Along with a tow authorization prepared before the stop and digitally signed by Officer Briggs the morning of the incident. The courtroom shifted. Maya heard it, felt it the moment a community understood that what had happened to her had not been a misunderstanding. It had been arranged. Briggs's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we strongly dispute the interpretation of these records. Officer Briggs had no knowledge of Judge Williams's identity at the time of..." Judge Graves raised one hand. "Counsel, I suggest you save argument for the appropriate stage. Today, I am concerned with risk." Maya looked at Briggs then. His jaw was tight, but his eyes had changed. The certainty was gone. What remained was calculation, and beneath that, something close to panic. Then Cole was mentioned. Ramsey described his call, his assault, his protective custody, and his sworn statement. She did not reveal his location. When she said his wife was 7 months pregnant, several older women in the gallery shook their heads quietly. the way church mothers do when wrongdoing has crossed from illegal into wicked. Whitmore looked down at the table. Maya saw it. Not shame. Strategy. When the arguments ended, Judge Graves removed his glasses and folded them with great care. "This court has heard enough for today's purpose," he said. "The allegations presented are not merely serious. They describe, if proven, the use of public authority as a private instrument of theft, intimidation, and humiliation. The badge is not a hunting license. The courtroom will not treat it as one." No one moved. Given the evidence of obstruction, attempted destruction of records, threats to witnesses, and the coordinated nature of the alleged conduct, detention is granted for Sheriff Charles Whitmore, Officer Daniel Briggs, Sergeant Thomas Keene, Grant Harlan, and Peter Harlan pending further proceedings. Briggs closed his eyes. Whitmore's face remained still, but one hand curled slowly against the table. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, the crowd was quieter than before. Not disappointed, not confused, just waited. Justice, Maya knew, was not a parade. It was a long road, with too many graves beside it. But today, for the first time, the road had turned. Harold Benton approached her near the courthouse steps. "They showed my truck on that list," he said. "I saw. My name wasn't there, just the vehicle." He looked toward the street, where reporters were speaking into cameras. "That bothered me at first. Then I thought maybe that's how they saw us all along. Not names, not people, just what they could take." Maya's voice softened. "The court will learn your name." He nodded once, and his eyes shone, though no tears fell. "Good." Evelyn stood beside Maya as the wind moved lightly through the flags above the courthouse entrance. "You all right?" she asked. Maya looked down at her wrists, then at the courthouse doors behind her, then at the people gathered on the steps, older men in veterans' caps, widows in Sunday coats, workers still in uniforms, mothers holding folded papers like proof of wounds no one had believed. "No," Maya said truthfully, "but I'm steady." Evelyn smiled. "Steady. Will carry you farther than all right." Across the street, news cameras flashed as federal marshals loaded Briggs and Whitmore into separate vehicles. Briggs glanced once toward Maya. This time, she did not meet his eyes. She was looking at the people he had never bothered to see. The next phase would be harder. Trials were not built on outrage. They were built on patience, documents, testimony, and the willingness to let truth survive attack after attack. Maya knew every defense they would raise. They would call it procedure. They would call it discretion. They would call victims confused, angry, opportunistic. They would try to make theft sound like policy and cruelty sound like caution. But now there was a record, and there were witnesses. And there was a judge, not presiding, not controlling, not above the pain, but standing inside it, who had learned on a quiet street that justice was not blind by nature. It had to be taught where to look. The weeks that followed did not move like headlines. They moved like court calendars, sealed motions, discovery deadlines, witness interviews, and long evenings where courage had to be chosen again after the cameras left. Maya Williams returned to the courthouse only for matters cleared by Chief Judge Bell. She did not preside over Brookhaven County cases. She did not speak publicly about the prosecution. She kept her statements clean, her records cleaner, and her anger folded carefully where no defense attorney could use it as a weapon. But every morning, before she left her house, she looked at the fading marks around her wrists and remembered the sound of Daniel Briggs laughing when she said she was a federal judge. That memory did not weaken her. It organized her. The trial began 6 months later. By then, autumn had taken hold of Georgia. The courthouse lawn was scattered with brown leaves, and older men stood outside in windbreakers and veterans' caps, talking quietly the way people do before funerals or verdicts. Inside, the courtroom was full every day. Some came because they had lost property. Some came because they had lost faith. Some came because they wanted to see whether the law, once embarrassed into action, could still finish what it started. Maya sat in the second row, not at counsel table, not on the bench. Evelyn Carter sat beside her, wearing a navy dress and the same church gloves from the first hearing. Harold Benton sat one row behind them, Denise Mallory came every morning with a small photograph of her late husband tucked inside her Bible. The prosecution opened with the log. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leah Ramsey stood before the jury and spoke without raising her voice. She explained how the system worked: targeted stops, false justifications, immediate towing, inflated storage fees, forfeiture paperwork, auction transfers, campaign money, and silence enforced by fear. On the screen, the recovered spreadsheet appeared again. But this time the jury saw more than Maya's row. They saw Harold Benton, marked as low resistance. They saw Denise Mallory, marked emotional, but manageable. They saw Rafael Ortiz, marked language barrier, expedite. They saw Maya Williams, marked judicial risk. A juror in the front row pressed her lips together when that phrase appeared. Maya noticed. Ramsey let the silence do its work. Then she said, "The defendants did not merely steal vehicles. They studied people. They calculated who could be hurt quietly." The defense objected. Judge Graves overruled. The first witnesses were careful: county clerks, data technicians, bank officers, people whose testimony came in numbers, login times, wire transfers, metadata, and contract renewals. The defense tried to make the case sound complicated. Ramsey made it simple: a tow dispatched before a stop, a report created after an arrest, a deleted file recovered from a mirror backup, a campaign committee receiving money through a consulting firm that shared an address with Ridgeway's owner. Paper, Maya had learned long ago, could either hide evil or trap it. This time, it trapped it. Then the victims testified. Harold Benton took the stand in his pressed gray suit, one hand resting on a cane he hated kneading. He told the jury about his pickup, about the taillight that was not broken, about the receipt in the glove box no officer would look at, about missing 3 medical appointments after Ridgeway kept the truck. He did not cry. That almost made it worse. "I served this country," he said, looking at the jury, "not the defendants. I paid for that truck with money I earned. I kept it clean. I kept it insured. I kept it legal. And one afternoon, men with badges decided my word was worth less than their paperwork." Daniel Briggs stared down at the table. Sheriff Whitmore sat very still. Denise Mallory testified the next day. Her voice trembled when she described the Cadillac, not because it was expensive, but because it had been her husband's last gift to himself before cancer took him. She told the jury how she saw it later in auction photos, the rosary still hanging from the mirror. "I called Ridgeway and asked for the rosary back," she said. "They told me personal items were disposed of." An older woman on the jury looked away. Then came Evan Cole. The defense had spent months preparing to destroy him. They called him compromised, frightened, disloyal, guilty, desperate for protection. By the time he walked to the witness stand, the room knew exactly what was coming. Cole looked thinner than he had in the hospital, but steadier. His wife sat near the back with their newborn son asleep against her shoulder. Ramsey asked him why he had come forward. Cole looked at the jury. "Because I helped keep quiet, something I knew was wrong. And because one day my son is going to ask me what kind of man I was when telling the truth cost something." The defense attacked him hard. They brought up the tires Ridgeway had paid for. They brought up his silence during Maya's arrest. They brought up the fact that he ran before making a formal statement. Cole did not pretend innocence he had not earned. "Yes," he said again and again. "I was afraid. Yes, I stayed quiet. Yes, I benefited. Yes, I should have spoken sooner." Finally, Briggs's attorney leaned close to the podium and asked, "Officer Cole, isn't it true you are saying all of this now to save yourself?" Cole looked at him for a long moment. "No, sir. I'm saying it because I already lost myself once." The courtroom went still. Maya felt Evelyn's hand close over hers. On the 8th day, the prosecution played Evelyn Carter's video. The screen showed Meridian Avenue in bright afternoon light. It showed Maya on the bike. It showed Briggs shouting the words that had started all of it. It showed his hand in her hair. It showed the shove. It showed her body striking the hot exhaust. It showed the tow truck arriving with terrible efficiency. No narration was needed. When the lights came back up, Evelyn took the stand. Ramsey asked her why she recorded. Evelyn folded her gloved hands in her lap. Because I am old enough to know that memory is not always enough when the person doing wrong has a badge. The defense tried to suggest she had misunderstood what she saw. Evelyn looked at the attorney with the patient disappointment of a grandmother correcting a child at church. Counselor, I have been black in America for 67 years. I know the difference between confusion and cruelty. No one objected. Maya testified on the 10th day. She walked to the stand with the slow care her legs still required on cold mornings. She raised her right hand. She gave her name, her title, her oath, and then she told the story plainly. She did not dramatize the pain. She did not soften the insult. She did not make herself larger than what happened. That was the power of it. She let the facts stand upright. Ramsey asked, Judge Williams, when Officer Briggs laughed at your identification as a federal judge, what did you understand in that moment? Maya looked briefly at Briggs, then back to the jury. I understood that he had already decided who I was before I spoke. And when you saw your motorcycle being towed, I understood that the stop had a purpose before it had a reason. A quiet moved through the room. Then Ramsey asked, what did this investigation reveal to you? Maya took a breath. That the case I had been struggling to understand was not hidden because it was complicated. It was hidden because too many people had agreed not to look. On cross-examination, Briggs's attorney tried to make her seem angry, biased, personally invested. Judge Williams, you were humiliated that day, were you not? Yes. You were angry? Yes. You wanted Officer Briggs punished? Maya held his gaze. I wanted the truth documented. Punishment is what happens when people are guilty. The attorney paused, then changed direction. Whitmore did not testify. Men like him rarely did when words could finally be tested. His attorneys argued that he was a busy sheriff who trusted subordinates, that campaign donations were legal, that Ridgeway was a contractor, not a conspiracy partner. They said the recovered emails were being misread. They said productivity did not mean profit. They said pressure did not mean instruction. They said a great many things that sounded reasonable only if you ignored the people sitting behind Maya. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On the second evening, just after 5, the courtroom filled again. Maya sat beside Evelyn. Harold Benton sat behind her. Denise Mallory held her Bible. Cole's wife rocked the baby gently near the back. The jury entered. Maya listened as the verdicts were read. Conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law. Guilty. Obstruction of justice. Guilty. Wire fraud. Guilty. Extortion under color of official right. Guilty. Asset. Forfeiture. Fraud. Guilty. Again and again. Guilty. Briggs stared forward, face pale, jaw slack. Sergeant Keene bowed his head. Grant Harlan cursed under his breath and was silenced by a marshal. Peter Harlan began to cry. Sheriff Whitmore did not move until the final guilty verdict was read against him. Then something in his shoulders sank. So slightly most people might have missed it. Maya did not. It was the moment power realized it had become evidence. Judge Graves thanked the jury and set sentencing for a later date. But before he adjourned, he looked across the courtroom, not at the defendants alone, but at the victims, the witnesses, the community that had carried the weight of being disbelieved. This court cannot return every lost year, every missed appointment, every humiliation, or every night of fear, he said. But it can say, clearly and publicly, that the law is not a private road for powerful men. It is a public promise. And when that promise is broken, the breaking must have consequences. The gavel fell. Outside, the courthouse steps were crowded, but quieter than Maya expected. No cheering erupted. No celebration broke loose. People hugged each other gently. Some cried. Some stood still, as if waiting for their bodies to believe what their ears had heard. Harold Benton approached Maya with tears finally shining in his eyes. They said, "Guilty," he whispered. Maya nodded. They did. He looked up at the flag above the courthouse. My truck's still gone. I know. My appointment's still missed. I know. He wiped at his eyes. But they said guilty. This time, Maya's voice softened. Yes, sir. They said it where everyone could hear. Evelyn stood beside them, watching reporters gather below the steps. That matters, she said. Not enough. But it matters. Maya looked out at the people, the cameras, the courthouse lights beginning to glow against the autumn dusk. The verdict did not heal the burn on her leg or erase the hand in her hair. It did not return Denise's rosary or all the vehicles already sold. It did not give Evan Cole back the months he had spent afraid or restore the faith Brookhaven County had lost one traffic stop at a time. But it put the truth on the record. And sometimes the record was where repair began. Sentencing came on a cold December morning. The kind of morning when breath rose white over the courthouse steps and people kept their hands tucked inside coat pockets while waiting for doors to open. Brookhaven County had changed since the verdict, but not in the clean, simple way news anchors liked to describe. The streets were still the same. The churches still rang their bells. Ruth's kitchen still served biscuits with too much butter, and men at the counter still argued about football as if the world were not always one bad law away from wounding somebody. But beneath the ordinary sounds, something had shifted. People were watching now. They were asking for records. They were writing down badge numbers. They were no longer assuming that a uniform made a story true. Maya Williams arrived with her mother. It was the first time her mother had come to court since the day Maya was sworn in as a federal judge. Back then, she had worn a blue dress and cried quietly in the front row, while Maya raised her hand and promised to administer justice without respect to persons. This morning, she wore a camel-colored coat, pearl earrings, and the calm expression of a woman who had survived enough history to know that justice often arrived late and limping. "You sure you want to be here?" Maya asked, as they climbed the courthouse steps slowly. Her mother gave her a side glance. "I raised a daughter who asks hard questions for a living. Don't start asking easy ones now." Maya smiled faintly and held the door for her. Inside, the hallway was crowded again, but different from the trial days. There was less tension now, less uncertainty. The guilt had been spoken. Today was about consequence. Harold Benton stood near the same marble column, wearing his medals again. Denise Mallory held a small envelope in both hands. Later, she told Maya it contained a photograph of the Cadillac and the rosary that had never been returned. Evelyn Carter was already there, sitting on a bench with her purse in her lap and her gloves folded neatly beside her, watching everyone with the quiet authority of a woman who had accidentally become history because she refused to look away. When Maya approached, Evelyn stood. "How's the leg?" she asked. "Better when it doesn't rain. That means you're officially old enough to predict weather with your bones." Maya laughed softly. It felt strange, the sound of it, but not wrong. In the courtroom, Judge Graves took the bench at 9 sharp. The defendants entered one by one. Daniel Briggs looked thinner than he had during trial. His shoulders rounded as if the months in custody had taught his body what humility felt like, even if his soul had not yet accepted the lesson. Sergeant Keene stared at the table. Grant Harlan's face was gray. Peter Harlan kept his eyes down. Sheriff Charles Whitmore came last, still trying to carry dignity like a coat, though it no longer fit him. Victim statements came first. Harold Benton walked to the lectern with his cane in one hand and a folded paper in the other. He unfolded it, then seemed to decide he did not need it. "I lost a truck," he said, his voice rough but steady. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was how small they made me feel when I tried to explain that I had done nothing wrong. I am 72 years old. I served in Vietnam. I buried friends. I raised children. I paid taxes in this county for 46 years. And still, one officer with a false report and one tow truck made me feel like I had no place to stand. He paused, and the courtroom stayed silent. "I want my truck back, if it still exists. But more than that, I want my grandchildren to drive through Brookhaven without learning to be afraid of the people paid to protect them." Denise Mallory spoke next. She held her husband's photograph as she described watching his Cadillac appear in an auction listing, the car polished and staged for sale, while her grief was treated as abandoned property. Her voice broke only once, when she said, "They didn't just take a car. They took the last place where I could still smell his aftershave." Even Briggs looked down then. Evan Cole spoke briefly. His wife sat in the gallery with their baby asleep against her chest. Cole did not ask the court to see him as heroic. He asked it to remember how easily fear could become cooperation. I told myself silence was survival, he said, but silence became permission. I will live with that. I should live with that. But I hope this county teaches young officers something different than what I learned too late. Then Maya was called. She rose slowly. Her mother's hand touched her wrist for 1 second before letting go. Maya walked to the lectern and placed both hands lightly on its sides. For a moment, she did not look at the defendants. She looked at the gallery. At Harold, Denise, Evelyn, Cole's wife, clerks, neighbors, old churchwomen, working men in uniform shirts, people who had come to witness not vengeance, but acknowledgement. Then, she looked at Judge Graves. Your Honor, I have spent my career believing that the law is one of the few places where power can be made to answer questions. What happened in Brookhaven County was the opposite. Power asked the questions, supplied the answers, wrote the paperwork, took the property, erased the records, and called that procedure. Her voice remained calm, but every word carried. When Officer Briggs pulled me from my motorcycle, when he mocked my identity, when he grabbed my hair, pushed me into the exhaust pipe, and watched my bike being taken, he did not know all that would follow. But he did know one thing. He knew he believed he could do it without consequence. That belief is what brought us here. Briggs stared forward, jaw tight. Maya continued, I am not asking this court to sentence these men because I am a judge. I am asking this court to sentence them because no one should have to be a judge to be believed. No one should need a title, a camera, or federal contacts to prove they are a human being. A murmur moved through the room, soft as breath. She looked toward the defendants then. The law is not cruel because it punishes wrongdoing. The law becomes cruel when it protects wrongdoing and punishes the wounded for speaking. That is what happened here. And today, this court has the chance to say that public office is not a shield for private greed. She stepped back. Her mother was crying when Maya returned to her seat, though she did it silently, with one tissue folded tight in her hand. Judge Graves pronounced sentence after lunch. Sheriff Whitmore received the longest term, followed by Grant Harlan, Sergeant Keene, Briggs, and the others. Restitution was ordered. Vehicles still in Ridgeway's possession were to be returned where possible. A federal monitor would oversee Brookhaven County's forfeiture practices. Ridgeway Towing's contracts were voided. Harlan data was barred from county work. The sheriff's department would undergo outside review, training, and record audits for years. None of it was enough. All of it mattered. When Briggs stood for sentencing, he finally turned toward Maya. For a second, she thought he might apologize, but his mouth tightened, and he looked away. Maya felt no disappointment. An apology from an unrepentant man was just another form of theater. Outside, snow flurries drifted lightly, though they melted before touching the sidewalk. Reporters waited again, but Maya walked past most of them. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, a young black girl in a red coat stood beside her grandmother, staring at Maya with open curiosity. The grandmother said, "Go on, baby. Ask her." The girl stepped forward. "Are you the judge from the motorcycle?" Maya knelt carefully, ignoring the stiffness in her leg. "I am. Were you scared?" Maya looked at her small face, serious and searching. Around them, the courthouse, the cameras, the flags, and the winter air seemed to fade. "Yes," Maya said. "I was scared, but you still did it?" Maya smiled gently. "Being brave doesn't mean you aren't scared. It means fear doesn't get to make the final decision." The girl thought about that, then nodded as if filing it away for a future day she might need it. 2 weeks later, Maya's motorcycle was released from evidence. Agent Ellis brought her to the federal impound facility himself. The bike had been photographed, dusted, tagged, examined, and documented so thoroughly that it felt less like a vehicle than a witness who had survived cross-examination. Maya stood beside it for a long moment, running one hand along the fuel tank. There was a small scrape near the exhaust where she had fallen. The mechanic offered to buff it out. Maya said no. Some scars were not damage. Some were testimony. On Christmas Eve, Maya hosted dinner at her townhouse. Her mother brought collard greens and cornbread dressing. Evelyn brought pound cake. Harold Benton came with his grandson, who had helped him recover what was left of his pickup from a holding lot 3 counties away. Denise Mallory brought sweet potato pie and, tucked inside her purse, a new rosary someone from her church had given her. Agent Ellis stopped by with his wife and left early because duty called, as it always did. Evan Cole sent a card with a photograph of his baby boy, sleeping with one fist tucked under his chin. On the back, he had written, "I will teach him the truth sooner than I learned it." They ate at Maya's table beneath warm light while rain tapped softly against the windows. No one talked about the trial at first. They talked about children, recipes, old neighborhoods, church choirs, bad knees, good coffee, the price of groceries, and how Ruth's kitchen still made the best meatloaf within 50 miles. That, Maya realized, was part of justice too. Not the dramatic part, the human part. The return of ordinary conversation after fear had taken up too much room. Later, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Maya stood alone in the garage beside her motorcycle. She wore an old sweater and house shoes, her hair loose around her shoulders. The bike rested under the soft garage light, cleaned but not perfected, restored but not erased. Her mother appeared in the doorway. "You riding again?" "Not tonight, but someday?" Maya looked at the bike, then at the faint scar on her leg. "Yes," she said. "Someday." Her mother nodded. "Good. Don't let them keep the road." After her mother went inside, Maya remained in the garage a while longer. She thought of the first day, the shout, the hand in her hair, the burn, the cruiser door closing. She thought of the map of red pins, Cole's shaking voice, Evelyn's phone held steady, Harold's truck, Denise's rosary, Whitmore on her porch, Briggs in the courtroom, the little girl in the red coat asking whether she had been scared. The case had found her when she had been looking for proof. In the end, the proof had not been one document, one video, one witness, or one recovered file. It had been all of them together. A community deciding that silence had cost too much. A frightened officer choosing truth before it was too late. An older woman pressing record. A mother reminding her daughter to eat before fighting the world. A judge learning that justice was not something you sat above and administered from a bench. Sometimes justice had to be carried by hand. Sometimes it limped. Sometimes it wore bruises. And sometimes, when the road had been stolen, justice climbed back on the bike and took the road home. Maya turned off the garage light and went inside, leaving the motorcycle in the dark not as evidence anymore, but as a promise. Justice doesn't belong to power. It belongs to those who refuse to look away. The lesson of Maya Williams's story is that injustice often survives, because good people are taught to stay silent, look away, or believe they are powerless. But one steady voice, one brave witness, and one person who refuses to accept a lie can expose an entire system built on fear and corruption. The story reminds us that justice is not only found in courtrooms or titles. It lives in ordinary people who choose courage over comfort. No one should need power to be treated with dignity, and no badge, office, or uniform should ever stand above the truth. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.